Today we're going to talk about 6 rules of subject-verb agreement. Now, you will want to take notes, so you need to have your book and pen or pencils available. So here are the first 6 rules that we're going to discuss today. Write them down. So the first, singular subject, singular verb. Plural subject, plural verb. Number 3, subjects joined by and use a plural verb, and there are exceptions that we'll be discussing as well. Collective nouns use singular verbs unless referring to more than one group. Number 5, neither of and either of use singular verbs, and these are not to be confused with neither, nor, either, or. Number 6, the pronouns each of, one of, somebody, anybody, someone, everyone, anyone, etc. use singular verbs. So the first rule, a singular subject takes a singular verb. So state whether the subject of each sentence is singular or plural. Number 1, a potted plant was placed on the desk. A potted plant was placed on the desk. What was placed on the desk? A potted plant. One plant. Therefore, a singular subject takes a singular verb, was. A potted plant was. Mathematics is my favorite subject. Mathematics is my favorite subject. What is my favorite subject? Mathematics. It's one subject. It's the name of one subject. Therefore, a singular subject uses a singular verb. So mathematics is. The island has many coconut trees. The island has many coconut trees. There's one island. What has many coconut trees? The island. One island. So a singular subject takes a singular verb. The island has. Number 4, Jim wants to know if Tom has the paintbrush. Jim wants to know if Tom has the paintbrush. Who wants to know? Jim does. Jim is the name of one boy. A singular subject takes a singular verb. So Jim wants. Number 5, was the cherry tree cut down? Was what cut down? The cherry tree, one tree. It's a singular subject, therefore we use a singular verb, was. The second rule, a plural subject takes a plural verb. Potted plants were placed on the desk. In the previous example, the sentence read, a potted plant. In this example, we have potted plants, more than one plant. So what was placed on the desk? Potted plants, more than one. Plural subject, plural verb. So in this instance, we see 2 potted plants on the desk. It can, of course, be more than 2, but we know for sure it's more than one plant, more than one potted plant. So a plural subject takes a plural verb. Potted plants were. Mathematics and Spanish are my favorite subjects. What are my favorite subjects? Math and Spanish. Here we have the names of more than one subject. A plural subject takes a plural verb. These islands have many coconut trees. These tells us that there's more than one. So what has many coconut trees? These islands do. So plural subject, plural verb. Jim and Sarah want to know if Tom has the paintbrush. Who wants to know? Jim and Sarah want to know. That's a plural subject. Plural subject takes a plural verb. Were the cherry trees cut down? Were the cherry trees? Definitely more than one cherry tree. A plural subject again takes a plural verb. So let's move on to rule 3. Subjects joined by and use a plural verb. So state whether the subject of each sentence is singular or plural. The car and van are moving quickly. The car and van. We see here we have two objects, a car and a van. That's a plural subject. Therefore, the verb is also plural. TikTok and Discord. Two separate items, two separate online platforms. Therefore, the verb is again plural. Now, of course, it's the English language, so there are exceptions, and here's one. Bread and butter is or are a simple meal to have for breakfast. Now, there's a clue here. There's a clue here. The answer is bread and butter is a simple meal. So the emphasis is not really on the bread and butter. We are calling bread and butter together a simple meal. It is a meal that we could have for breakfast. Therefore, we use a singular verb. It is considered as a singular subject in this instance. Here we have a different instance. So let's read the sentence. Bread and butter was or were bought at the grocery. Bread and butter was or were bought at the grocery. The answer is bread and butter were bought at the grocery. And you can tell because we look here, look at the pictures, we can observe the pictures and we recognize that we bought two separate items. In this instance, we are not considering them a single item or a meal, a single meal. We are considering them as individual objects that we bought. So in the first instance, bread and butter is a meal. It's one meal that we can have. And in the other instance, we bought two separate items, so it's considered plural. It all depends on the context. Rule number 4. Collective nouns use a singular verb unless referring to more than one group. So here we have two examples. A herd of cattle was or was seen grazing in the field. Example 2. Herds of cattle was or were seen grazing in the fields. Well, let's examine the collective noun. A herd of cattle, one herd, one group of cattle. In example 2, we have herds of cattle. That tells us that there's more than one group. So in the first instance, a herd of cattle was because it's one group of animals. Whereas in the second instance, we have more than one group of animals. So herds of cattle were seen grazing in the fields. Here's another example of a collective noun being used. A flock of sheep was one group. It's one group of sheep. Whereas in this picture, we can clearly see more than one group, more than one flock of sheep. Number 5. Neither of and either of use singular verbs. Neither of the children speaks loudly. Neither of the children speaks loudly. Number 2. Either of the books is interesting. This can be rather tricky because we see books before the verb. However, you have to pay attention to the word of, neither of, either of. Once this is used, you choose the singular verb. So number 3, neither of the teachers dances well. Right? So the expressions neither of, either of, they take singular verbs. Number 6. The pronouns each, nobody, everybody, anyone, etc. use singular verbs. So someone has stolen my shoes. Everybody knows the answer. Not one of my books was read. So let's practice. I have some sentences here. I'd like you to choose the correct verb. So remind yourselves of the rules that we discussed, the 6 rules that we discussed. You will want to pause the video at this point and complete the exercise for me, and we'll come back shortly. All right, so let's see how many you were able to get correct. Here are the answers. Now, it's always a good idea to write down the rule that is being used. For instance, let's look at the first sentence. Rulers were used to measure the objects. You can also write beneath that plural subject, plural verb. Plural subject, plural verb. For the second one, was the vehicle moving quickly? Was the vehicle moving quickly? That's a singular subject, the vehicle. Singular subject, singular verb. So you write down the rules beneath each sentence. Now let's look at number 3. This is a tricky one. Peas and rice is a nutritious meal. Peas and rice is a nutritious meal. Now, did anyone put peas and rice are a nutritious meal? Well, that would be incorrect, because in this instance, we are saying that peas and rice is a meal, one nutritious meal. They go together. We consider them as one subject because it's referring to one meal that you can have. Whereas in number 4, peas and rice were bought at the grocery, and there's a spelling error there. That should be B-O-U-G-H-T, bought. So peas and rice were bought at the grocery, because this would mean that you purchased 2 individual items. So peas and rice were bought at the grocery. Number 5, a regiment of soldiers has secured the area, because it's one group of soldiers. Number 6, neither of the lights is. Neither of takes a singular verb. Number 7, nobody see or sees clearly when it is dark. Nobody takes a singular verb. So here we have an activity that I'd like you all to complete. You're going to create 6 sentences based on the 6 rules we discussed today. Post your sentences below and let's see how many answers we can get right. And of course, you have a homework assignment. So I'd like you to go to the Facebook page and complete the worksheet posted in the description. Bye.